Okay, let's jump right into it. Today we're taking a deep dive into a story that feels strangely current, despite being, well, incredibly ancient.
Mm-hmm.
Our focus is on a woman named Rūpananda.
Yes, and the texts paint a really vivid picture of her. She became a nun, a bhikkhuni, joining the monastic community.
Right.
But the accounts are pretty clear. It wasn't initially out of some, deep personal faith.
No, it was more, well, almost like a family trend. She was following a whole crew of her relatives into the monastic life.
Yeah, quite the list.
Her brother, who was the Buddha himself, his son Rahula, another brother, and her mother. So family affection seems to have been the driver, not a burning spiritual quest, at least not yet.
And she was, by all accounts, remarkably beautiful, really stunning. So much so that her name, Rūpananda, translates roughly to beauty nanda or delighting in form. Her name itself kind of points to her main characteristic at the time.
Which really sets up her central conflict, doesn't it? According to the story, anyway.
Yeah.
She actually avoided the Buddha.
Right, she stayed away.
Why? Because she knew his teachings focused on, well, the tough stuff. Impermanence, suffering, the non-self nature of everything.
The 5 aggregates.
Exactly. Form, feeling, perception, mental formations, consciousness. Basically everything that makes up what we think of as us.
And with her strong identification with, and you could say affection for, her physical form, she was terrified he would speak directly against her beauty, challenge the very thing she held most dear about herself.
So our mission in this deep dive is to understand how the Buddha, knowing this, employed this truly unique and powerful teaching method.
Skillful means, definitely.
To help Rūpananda confront her deep-seated attachment to physical appearance. What was that pivotal moment of realization for her? And, maybe more importantly, what can her journey teach us today about our own perceptions of beauty and reality?
It's a powerful story, very insightful.
So let's set the scene. We're in ancient India in the city of Savatthi, specifically at the Jetavana Monastery. This was a bustling hub, right? A real center of activity.
Oh, absolutely. It was the place where people, including the community of nuns, the bhikkhunis, would gather in the evenings.
After their daily practice.
Exactly. After alms round, keeping their ethical guidelines, they'd sort of freshen up and come, often with flowers or incense, ready to listen to the Buddha's Dhamma talks.
Dhamma meaning his teachings, the truth of things.
The way things are, yeah.
And the texts mention that people appreciated the Buddha in different ways. It wasn't just one kind of admiration.
That's a really interesting point the texts make. Some were just captivated purely by his physical presence, his form, his radiant appearance, just looking at him.
Right. And others?
Others were drawn by his voice, the sound of the Dhamma, how the truth just resonated when he spoke.
Then you had those who appreciated his simple, almost austere lifestyle.
Yes, the lukapamaka is the term used. Those who saw wisdom in his detachment from, worldly comforts, material things.
Yeah, maybe the deepest level.
Perhaps, yeah. The dhammapamaka. Those who were just in awe of his inner qualities. His virtue, his incredible concentration, his profound wisdom. They saw him as incomparable, like utterly unique because of these inner attainments.
So Rūpananda, even while deliberately staying away from him, she's hearing all of this.
Yeah.
This fervent praise from the other nuns and lay people.
Exactly. She heard them talking so intensely about her brother, the Buddha, raving about him.
And you can just imagine her thinking, gosh, if they praise his qualities, which aren't just about physical form this much, how much more intensely must he speak against my form, which is so beautiful and visually pleasing? That fear, mixed with the curiosity from hearing all the praise, it must have been really churning inside her.
That curiosity finally tipped the balance, it seemed. She decided she had to hear the Dhamma talk for herself.
Okay.
But, and this is crucial, she had a plan. The texts describe it as quite deliberate.
Right. She wasn't just showing up. She planned to go with the other nuns. But she intended to remain hidden, to not reveal herself to the Tathagata.
Tathagata, yeah. Another name for the Buddha, meaning thus gone or thus come.
So she wanted to see and hear, but without being seen by him. Sneaky.
Sort of. And the other nuns, they were apparently thrilled she was finally going.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the account says they were happy and actually anticipated a particularly wonderful Dhamma talk precisely because she was there. They clearly felt her presence was significant.
Interesting. So she goes, trying to blend in, but the Buddha, well, as you'd expect from the Buddha.
Yeah.
He knew she was there.
Oh, yeah. The texts state clearly he knew she was coming and was acutely aware of her inner state, her strong attachment, her strong affection for her body, as it's put.
And this is where his incredible skill, his skillful means, really comes into play.
Absolutely.
The source material says he decided the most effective way to help her would be to use the very thing she was attached to, form itself, to help her transcend that attachment.
It's described with that classic analogy, like removing a thorn with a thorn. He would use a powerful visual form to illustrate the true, impermanent nature of all form.
So, just as Rūpananda entered the monastery grounds, he acted. Using his, remarkable mystic power, he created an illusory image right there next to him.
And the details given are so specific. It wasn't just any image. It was an incredibly beautiful young woman.
Wow.
Described as being 16 years old, wearing vibrant red clothes, adorned with all her ornaments, and she was depicted as fanning the Buddha. Just the epitome of youthful beauty, designed to grab attention.
So Rūpananda is trying to be inconspicuous, maybe hiding at the back.
Yeah.
She sees the Buddha, and then her eyes land on this figure standing beside him.
And she was instantly captivated, hooked.
I mean, you can imagine, she looked at this illusory woman, then maybe glanced back at herself, and felt utterly inferior.
Yeah, the texts say she compared herself like a crow before a golden royal swan. Her eyes were whirling, just completely captivated by the sheer beauty of this illusion.
So the very thing she valued most about herself, her own beauty, she now saw presented in an apparently superior form.
And it completely engrossed her. The account notes she developed strong affection for this illusory form. So the Buddha had her attention completely hooked by her own attachment.
Clever. And then, while continuing his Dhamma talk, the Buddha began the real teaching. He started to change the appearance of the illusion.
This is where the illusion becomes the lesson, isn't it? It wasn't static. He showed her aging. Right there.
And it was gradual, wasn't it? Not instant.
Exactly. From that radiant 16-year-old, she was shown becoming 20 years old, then a middle-aged woman, then an old woman, and finally one who is extremely old and decrepit.
And the descriptions are quite graphic, aren't they? To really make the point.
Oh, very. Broken teeth, hair gone gray, bent over like a house rafter, leaning heavily on a staff, trembling with age. It's a vivid, uncompromising portrayal of the body's inevitable decline.
And Rūpananda's reaction, it must have shifted dramatically.
It did. At 20, the text says she was only slightly disillusioned, maybe thinking, okay, well, that's not quite as stunning as before. But as the signs of extreme old age appeared, the text says she became very disgusted. The attraction turned to revulsion.
But the teaching wasn't complete with just aging. That wasn't the end of it.
No, not at all. Then he showed the illusory form afflicted by sickness.
Oh, wow.
And the scene described is intense. The image crying out loudly, dropping its staff and fan, falling to the ground, and rolling around in its own urine and feces.
That's incredibly confronting. It's meant to shock, clearly.
Absolutely. And again, the text notes Rūpananda was very disgusted.
And finally, death.
Yes. The account describes the image dying, and then the aftermath. The body immediately became bloated.
Oh, dear.
Pulpas and worms flowed from the 9 openings, the orifices and any wounds, and crows and other creatures gathered to tear at the body.
Disgust, horror.
Yeah.
I mean, she witnessed the entire trajectory of a physical form, from idealized beauty right through to decay and disintegration.
Played out right before her eyes, in that very place, not abstractly, but right there.
And seeing this entire unavoidable process, aging, sickness, and death happening to that body in that place.
That triggered the pivotal realization for Rūpananda.
This is the aha moment. The texts actually describe her reflection, her thought process.
Yes, it was very direct and profound. She thought, this woman reached old age, sickness, and death in this very place. In the same way, old age, sickness, and death will come to my own body.
She saw the impermanence, the anicca, of that form, and it instantly made her see the impermanence of her own form. Boom.
And the texts explain how seeing the body as impermanent naturally led her to see it as inherently unsatisfactory, as suffering, dukkha, and also as non-self, anatta. Because if something is constantly changing and ultimately unreliable, you can't find lasting happiness or a stable identity in it.
Trying to cling to it just leads to suffering.
Inevitably. And therefore, it can't be a permanent, independent self.
This generated a powerful internal shift, didn't it? A complete turnaround.
Absolutely. The texts say the 3 realms of existence, this whole cycle of birth and death she was caught in, suddenly appeared to her like a burning fire.
Something you'd want to escape immediately.
Or like a corpse tied to her neck. just utter revulsion and urgency. Her mind became strongly inclined towards genuine meditation practice. She was ready for the deepest truth.
So knowing she had this foundational insight, this visceral understanding of impermanence, the Buddha then gave her the specific, direct teaching she needed for full liberation.
Yes, he spoke to her directly then, addressing her as Nanda.
And what was the core message?
He emphasized the body's lack of inherent substance or essence, like really drilled down on it. He said, do not form the perception that there is essence in this body. There is not even a little essence here.
Wow, blunt.
Very direct.
And here's where that incredibly powerful metaphor comes in, the one often associated with this teaching, the city of bones.
Yes. The Buddha stated, this is a city made of bones, built up with 300 bones. And he spoke that specific verse, Dhammapada, verse 148.
The Dhammapada being that famous collection of the Buddha's sayings.
Exactly. And the verse reads, a city made of bones, plastered with flesh and blood, where old age and death, pride and self-conceit are deposited.
Powerful imagery.
And the commentary in the text really unpacks this. It compares the body to, like, an external structure, a house or a city built of wood, vines, and clay.
Okay.
A place where you store things, maybe grain or goods. Similarly, this internal city, our body, is constructed of these 300 or so bones,
Right.
held together by sinews, covered in flesh and blood, and wrapped in skin. It's a structure.
And what's stored or deposited there isn't just physical matter, but suffering.
Precisely. It's the place where aging inevitably happens, where death resides, where pride, especially the kind that comes from fleeting good fortune like beauty, gets lodged.
And self-conceit.
Yeah, which the texts specifically say destroys good deeds.
Yeah.
So both physical and mental suffering are deposited here. The conclusion drawn is stark. Nothing in this structure is ultimately worth grasping onto.
It's such a radical reframing of what we usually identify with as me, isn't it?
Completely turns it on its head.
So the impact of this direct teaching, layered upon that profound insight sparked by the visual illusion, it was immediate and transformative for Rūpananda.
Absolutely. The texts relate that Rūpananda, now called Nanda, based on this teaching, sent forth her knowledge, meaning she applied her insight and attained the fruit of stream entry.
Stream entry, that's the first irreversible stage on the path to full awakening, right? Where you've entered the stream leading directly to liberation.
Exactly. It's a monumental shift.
Especially for someone who started out avoiding the Buddha out of vanity, to go from that to achieving this initial breakthrough towards the end of all suffering. Incredible.
And the text mentioned the Buddha didn't stop there. He gave her further instructions, specifically on the meditation subject of emptiness, to support her progress towards the higher paths.
Ah, so helping her deepen that insight even further. And how does her story culminate in the texts?
At the conclusion of that very discourse, that same teaching session, Rūpananda attained arahantship. Full liberation, the end of suffering.
Wow.
And it notes that Dhamma talk was incredibly beneficial, not just for her, but for the whole large assembly of people who were present listening.
What an incredible journey described in these texts. Just amazing. From being so caught up in physical appearance, her own, and then that illusion, to seeing the fundamental impermanence and lack of solid self in form, all through the Buddha's masterful, really tailored teaching.
Yeah, very specific to her needs.
And ultimately, reaching full liberation, arahantship.
It's such a powerful demonstration of how understanding the true nature of reality, really seeing it, can cut through even the deepest, most ingrained attachments.
And it resonates so strongly today, doesn't it? I mean, it may be more than ever. We live in a world that is just obsessed with physical appearance.
Constant.
We're constantly bombarded with idealized images. Our value, our happiness, our sense of worth are often implicitly or even explicitly linked to how we look. We pour immense energy, time, money
So many resources.
into trying to perfect or just preserve our physical form.
Rūpananda's story just fundamentally challenges that entire paradigm.
Yeah.
It forces us, you, me, everyone listening, to ask where we are really placing our value. Where are we placing our hope for happiness? Is it in something inherently unstable?
Exactly. What happens if you truly take the Buddha's description to heart? If you really sit with it. Seeing the body not as this permanent you or a reliable source of lasting happiness, but as he described it in that verse, a temporary construction, a city of bones plastered over, where aging, sickness, and death are the inevitable residents. It's not morbid. It's just factual from that perspective.
And if that physical form isn't the solid, reliable self we often assume it to be, then,
Hmm.
well, what is? And what implications does that have for how you interact with your own reflection in the mirror or the images you see scrolling past every single day?
It really makes you think. What stands out to you from Rupananda's deep dive? Where does it land for you personally?